From one ambitious college student with a dream in Stillwater, Oklahoma, came Kicker. From the humble beginnings inside of a one-car garage, Steve Irby's love and passion for music started as a hobby and eventually grew into the inspiration for a speaker business. Steve had one dream and no other options. His relentless pursuit made Kicker what it is today.
Well, I'll probably start off with back in high school. I started playing in a rock and roll band in 1965. The Beatles had just come to the U.S. and toured, and so all of us wanted to start garage bands. Everybody was really excited about playing in a band, and so my best buddy played drums, and I played keyboards, and we got a band together. And I had a little home organ that I used, and it wasn't very loud, and he played really loud, and so I was always complaining he was playing too loud and you couldn't hear what I was playing. And so as time went on, I was able to buy a kind of a nice portable keyboard, but I didn't have an amplifier for it. And I went to my dad and I said, you know, I've got to have an amp and something that really puts out some pretty good sound, because the drummer plays loud, you know, the guitar player plays loud, everybody's loud, and I can't hear myself.
At Pioneer, we don't build a high-fidelity receiver the way some of our competitors do. Instead of a pressboard bottom, our SX780 has a metal one that limits interference. It has power meters and a DC power supply for richer bass.
So finely engineered and designed, so incredible in sound.
From copper conduits to semiconductors and capacitors, the elements it takes to build a speaker are multifaceted. To obtain that high-end sound with clarity and power is not cheap.
And he said, well, how much does it cost? And he was sitting there reading the evening paper, I remember, and he said, I said, $300. And then I remember the paper just kind of dropped, and he looked at me like, I knew it was coming, like, what? But so in 1965, I mean, $300 was quite a bit of money. And but he didn't say no. He said, is it something that we could build? And I thought about it and thought, well, maybe we could build a speaker box. My dad's hobby was building things, and he had a wood shop, and so we went to work and just took these plans out of the book and built a speaker enclosure for it. And then I bought a used amplifier to go on top. So that became a hobby for me through high school, and I bought more speakers and built PA boxes for the band.
Steve played in bands all the time, and he was always interested in sound. And I think they had the band had recorded at a studio in Oklahoma City, and the studio had these Altec Lansing Voice of the Theater speaker cabinets, which are real large commercial type speaker cabinets, everything, and he thought it'd be neat to try to build a pair of those. And so I think he got the plans from somewhere, and we started off building those in his dad's basement workshop.
Constantly researching amplifier designs and the science behind sound, Steve and Keith began building their own speaker enclosures. One of Steve's biggest influences was the book Loudspeaker and Enclosures. This gave Steve the assurance to pursue speaker design full-time.
From there, we decided that, well, we can build more.
So I had a little money, about $12,000 I'd inherited from my grandparents. And so we took that money and I bought woodworking equipment to build speaker boxes with. And we got some plans from the Altec Lansing company about how to build a big speaker box that they called the Voice of the Theater speaker box. It was used in motion picture theaters, and a lot of bands used them, and it was a big speaker box with a high frequency horn on top and a 15-inch woofer in the bottom. And so we took those plans and we began to build those boxes in our garage.
And so we started off just building duplicate cabinets and then adding components of commercially available theater speaker type systems.
Being a musician, I knew a lot of musicians around town. This was kind of back in the heyday. I mean, Garth Brooks used to come into my shop all the time. All these guys that were, have gone on to be famous and do all this stuff, but we were all musicians, and so I knew a lot of people to sell the speakers to, and that's how we got started, was just selling them to bands, no advertising, no nothing, just word of mouth. That was pretty much what I did for the first 7 years, from 73 to 80, was build speaker enclosures, do sound system installations, and we became somewhat of a little music store, and we built a line of home stereo speakers. We made disco speakers. We made speakers for churches and clubs and just anything that had to do with speakers, bands, electronics, and sold a little bit of musical instruments.
That's kind of when it really became a commercial enterprise, was there, because we were building custom cabinets in addition to copies of both the Altec and JBL commercial speaker systems, and we would build custom cabinets, and Steve started designing our own cabinets, or basically Stillwater Designs cabinets. This was prior to Kicker. Kicker hadn't come along yet. Okay.
In 1980, a friend of mine that had been a customer down at my little shop would moved into an old house on South Main Street, and he was an OSU student and would come down and would talk about speakers, and he had some money and he would pay me to build different experimental types of speakers and things for stereo or for disco speakers or whatever he could think of. And so we talked about stuff and kind of experimented, and he called me up and said he had moved back to Canton, Oklahoma, and had started a music store, and there was a lot of guys that were driving pickup trucks and working in the oil field and had quite a bit of money, and they wanted sound in their pickup trucks, but there wasn't a trunk to mount subwoofers or big speakers like in a car, so there was just a little space behind the back seat, or behind the seat. They were single cab pickup trucks.
Car audio became popular with the FM and AM radio, yet drivers had no say in what was being played. Just the option of changing channels or turning the radio off altogether. The accessibility and customization of new car technology, including audio tape decks, made way for car owners to help propel the car audio scene as technology steadily transformed year by year. The aftermarket had a vital role for car owners waiting to customize their own cars.
At that time, I'd been in business for 7 years and spent most of my time reading every book there was on speakers and experimenting and selling a few. And so that was, I kind of lived and breathed speakers. And so I built a speaker that went behind the seat in the pickup truck and sent it over to him. And he called me back and said, wow, they love this thing. They call it the ass kicker. And I go, really? He goes, yeah, because that's what it does, like right through the seat. You sit in the truck and you're like, wow, what was that? So it was pretty popular, to say the least.
So we had a friend who had a pickup, and we had him pull the pickup in the front of the shop there. And I went out with a tape measure and measured behind the seat and figured in the length and everything. And that's, if you saw the original kicker over there, that's what came out of that. And we mounted tweeters shooting straight up, and then we had a speaker and then passive radiators in it. And that's how the first kicker got started.
Steve and Keith decided to go all in and named the business Stillwater Design, creating custom speaker box enclosures and working with different audio equipment would eventually lead to Kicker. As early success took off and future gains looked inevitable, Kicker faced its first major setback.
We had a guy stop by that claimed that he was a factory rep and that he would sell, he sold products for electronics companies, and he said he thought he could sell these speakers for us in this Oklahoma, Texas area. And so we said, well, how many do you think you can sell? And he said, I think I can sell about 200 a month. And so we were like, wow, really, 200? That's a lot. that was good money. And so we kind of pooled our resources and got all the components, and Don built all the cabinets, and we built 200, and this guy dropped off the face of the earth. He never came back, wouldn't return calls. He bought one for his son, and we never heard from him again. So here we are sitting on 200 Kicker speakers, no money, and trying to figure out what to do. And so Don said, well, I've got a pickup truck. We could put one in, and I guess I'd go try to sell these things. And so that's what he did.
As Kicker pursued more avenues of marketability, new dealers and partners were made out of necessity. And this path is what catapulted Kicker's popularity. As Kicker moved year by year, it all led up to the newest facility. When Steve had the chance to upgrade Kicker's facility once again, he couldn't pass up the offer.
Finally, one day, my general manager walked in and said, we need to buy that building, and they just made a new offer that was even lower yet. And we just kind of couldn't afford not to buy it. And it came with 21 acres, and it was an opportunity to have everything under one roof. So that was, but we moved in I think, around 08, and we'd had it since 03. So we used it as a warehouse, then we moved our shipping over here and kind of gradually moved in. Then we built the building on the front, and that was a 2-year project and 2 years in planning. So that was a 4-year project. That wasn't overnight, but it's a great, great location. Best view in town, I think.
This best view in town comes with Kicker's very own museum, displaying unique vehicles and award-winning show cars, including interactive displays that recount the history of the company.
It did make it awkward because we had a lot of people that wanted to come to Kicker, and we went on a tour, you know. Well, we didn't really have anything to show that they expected to see. And so my goal was always, let's have a showroom where we can show people what we make and experience what we do. And so that's really what this all came from. This started off as a Polaris Ranger. It's called the Snowcat. We have names for a lot of the vehicles that we build, and obviously the theme on this is snow. So it's got the tracks on it. It's got a Kicker audio system in it, of course, up here on top. It has a cannon that shoots t-shirts, so you can stand in the back and shoot t-shirts up into the crowd. This has been at the Winter X Games in Colorado and a lot of different events. It pretty much sits here in the museum right now, but it still runs, works great, and has a Kicker subwoofer on the other side, and it's a snowboarding theme. These are where your snowboards would go right here, and so it's a fun vehicle. It's a show vehicle. All of these vehicles are pretty much show vehicles that basically are attention getters, which is pretty much what a show vehicle is. It has to be kind of crazy, something that somebody wouldn't normally do, and that people like to look at and have a little bit of fun with. So this little car was from the Netherlands. Our distributor in the Netherlands built this car with all Kicker product in it. It's a Trabant. It's a little East German car with a plastic body. It's kind of the early Volkswagen type product or everyman's car, but he built it into sound competition car, and it was a national champion for sound quality, and so we ended up buying it from him and shipping it over from Europe to Stillwater here just to show it off. It's a cute little car, all fitted out with all Kicker's best equipment from the 90s, so it's kind of a throwback. This has a couple of Kicker 18-inch subwoofers in the back. You can see through the viewing window here. And I don't know, it's kind of funny. We just left it as it was, but if you look at this, what they've written on the back window, it says, "When you think this is too loud, you are too old." And of course, they spelled "too" T-O instead of T-O-O. But this was just what they did. And the English translation wasn't the best. This started off as a 1950 Studebaker, and our guys bought this car. We bought it, Kicker bought it, but it was just a piece of junk rusting. And actually it sat in our parking lot for over a year. They didn't do anything with it. And then they finally started work. It was over a 2-year project. Completely reworked this car, built a brand new frame for it so it would sit low, put a Corvette engine in it, Kicker's best sound system installed inside of it. It's a beautiful kind of a dark plum color, and all the trim is done in copper instead of chrome. So it's a very unique car. This has been featured in Hot Rod magazine. A lot of press on this car. This Harley-Davidson is a bike that was owned by Captain Phil Harris, and he was kind of the star of The Deadliest Catch, which was a reality TV show that several years ago was actually had the largest viewing of any TV show, and they were crab fishermen up in Alaska. But our dealer in Anchorage, Alaska, actually installed a Kicker system on his boat. And so by doing that, we became friends, and we built this bike for him. It has a Kicker system installed in it. Actually has subwoofers in the saddlebags and Kicker speakers in the fairings. And so it's a pretty awesome system. But unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. And so they wanted to leave the bike here so people could see it. So this is what we call the wall of boom, and this is 16 15-inch Kicker subwoofers, and these are obviously square instead of round. This is something that we have a patent on, because a square speaker actually has more area, cone area, to push air than a round speaker for the same space. And so this is mainly for fun. We just did this. We said, you know, if we're going to have a visitor center and people come in, let's show them a wall of boom. And this will literally shake the whole building. When we first put it in, the ceiling tiles were falling out. And so all the ceiling tiles are now glued in, and the lights are secured too. We had a light drop right here, and I think we replaced this tile because it burned the tile. So yeah, it was kind of scary at first. Shakes all the windows, but this is for fun. This is the wall of boom. We crank it up maybe once or twice, 2 or 3 times a day when people come through and want to hear it. So it's a pretty popular attraction at the Kicker Visitor Center.
The front room and Museum of Kicker is just the beginning of the massive building that facilitates most of Kicker's operation, including office spaces, speaker design and testing rooms, as well as a shipping dock.
Make sure there's nothing top secret in here. No, this is our acoustic testing room in here. So this is where we do all of our listening and speaker development in here, and we have a computer station that we can measure all the speakers, and then we do listening as well. So we listen, measure, change things, and so this is a working room. This is where I spend a lot of time back here, just doing that. And the rumble you hear is our destruction room, which is in there. And we run speakers for hours on end, sometimes weeks, until they break.
For that sound quality.
And,
For like sound quality and
for durability,
durability.
primarily. So it's noisy.
Hey.
Kind of noisy back there. Can you turn it down? Turn it down a little.
Yeah. I wish.
All of the cardboard boxes that you see are what we call master pack cartons, and they're really thick, like triple layer cardboard, because when the product's manufactured overseas, it's got to be shipped on a container and then put in a truck and then shipped here and then stored and reshipped again. And so this protects it. So when you buy your new Kicker speaker, it still looks brand new, even though it's been halfway around the world and in several different warehouses. And so a big part of the process is keeping the product nice until it gets into the customer's hands. These shipments will be picked up by the trucks. They leave their trucks here and we load them up, and then at night they come and pick up the trailers and take them to the shipping hubs and ship them out. So these are orders that have been processed this morning that will be going out. Okay, that was the original Kicker logo from back in 1980. Yeah. So these are just some more different Kicker show vehicles that we use for different events. We have quite a few on the road most of the time, and then these are some that are in the shop for various reasons. I was going to just show you the boom room in here. When we set this up at a show, well, like I said, they just got back from a show, but this is a kind of like a mini wall of boom that we have in the semi here that we can set up and people can come in, and they have to use hearing protection because this room will shake you. Back starting in the garage, I didn't have any idea how it would end up. But I don't know. I had a sense of destiny, that something good was going to happen. I don't know. Maybe it was, the American dream. They tell you when you're a kid,
Steve was the one who had the passion for sound and the quality of sound and the innovator, and he had a vision of what this could be. And he's a great guy. What can you say?
I think anybody that wants to start a business or be involved in something like that, or just for what you're going to do in life, I think you have to analyze. Maybe that sounds kind of theoretical, but what you're good at, what you really like to do, I think that's where you're going to be the most successful. Yeah, sure, you can probably do other things. And I know I could have done other things and probably done okay. But I think that it's worth it to not kind of settle for second best, but just go for what you think that you can really do. Don't get in it just to make money. That's not going to make you happy, I was thrilled to move into that old house in 1980 or 74 when we moved into that old house, as thrilled as I was to move into this building. It's the same feeling, it's like, yes, we did it, So I think my takeaway is find out what you're really good at, what you want to do, and determine to be the very best that there is in that. And you know, somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to be the best in the world at that. And why not you? Could be anybody. You know, why not go for it? You know, and why settle for less? I mean, what's the point? You know, somebody's going to do it. So that's kind of the way that I've always looked at it, is follow your passion or your dream and just go for it.
Keep me coming through your